Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and welcome to another episode of Wild and Live, the show that brings you some of the coolest animal facts from across the world with the help of some pretty awesome and fabulous guests, conservationists, biologists, and filmmakers from across the world. One of our more recent guests, on one of our recent episodes, we were joined by invert enthusiast and education officer for the Shropshire Wildlife Trust, Bryony Carter. She told us all about the world of underwater aliens. We also had another brilliant episode on beavers, talking to Mark Elliott from the Devon Wildlife Trust. Now that video has only got 30 I can't even speak. I can never speak, can I? That video's only got 35 views, but it definitely deserves way more love. So once we're done with today's stream, I'd recommend you go and check it out. If you're a new viewer, I'd love it if you could take a few seconds to click the subscribe button and make sure you become part of this growing community. Your support truly means a lot. Right, let's get into it today. Our guest is a lover of creatures of the night. She's also a project manager for Fauna and Flora International. Gurveena Ghataure, are you wild and live?
Hey, Patrick.
How are you doing?
Good. Nice to see you.
Brilliant. We're going to be talking about some of your some time you spent out across the world filming awesome wildlife. Sorry, not filming awesome wildlife, documenting fantastic wildlife. You work with bats, or at least you have in the past. You've recently left Myanmar, where you were working on protecting different landscapes and species, including bats. But your interest and work with bats started far closer to home, working with the Bat Conservation Trust. I understand you were in charge of the bat phone.
That sounds really cool. So I was a summer intern on the Bat helpline, and it was a team of there's quite a few of us working on the helpline, and I mean it's everyone's dream to feel like they're Batwoman or Batman. They operate this National Bat Helpline to provide the general public and owners of buildings containing a bat roost, or the building trade, or landowners, and people who've come into contact with bats just to make sure they're doing the right thing. So they work with volunteers, scientists, industry, and government, both locally and nationally, to help bats on a range of different projects. So in the summer, bats are fully active, they're feeding and mating and giving birth. So it's a really busy time. And the helpline gets a lot of calls from people who have come across a bat, either in their house that's grounded or stuck, or a roost, and they need help and don't know what to do. So they ring us and talk through the steps. And depending on what needs to happen, we sometimes put them in touch with a bat carer in their area, who then go out and help them with more specific situations.
I suppose that's one of the things you don't think about is what happens if you find a bat in your house. What are some of the reactions of people? I mean, are they scared? Are they excited when they kind of get to see these bats up close?
So yeah, I mean, I think it's been mixed on the spectrum. Some people are scared, some people are super excited, some people don't want to handle them, and some people just want them to go away. But if it's during the day, then we have to guide them to sort of keeping the bat safe and warm and feeding it until they can release it at dusk when it's safe for the bat to go out. So we advise people to wear gloves or handle it using a towel if they're a bit scared. If they're really scared and they don't want to touch it, then we call a bat carer and try and get the bat carer to them immediately, and then they sort it out for them.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's really, really exciting. You'd also get calls from people doing building work and reporting bat crime, because bats are legally protected in the UK. So you can't roost, and so sometimes we had to get, involved into that. But bats, they generally are misunderstood, and people tend to fear them, and these perceptions have sort of been obstacles to their conservation. And so by informing and supporting people into contact with them and inspiring them, the Bat Conservation Trust are really working towards ensuring people can live harmoniously with bats and protect the species. So yeah, it was really cool. And
your work also, sorry to interrupt you there. I know that your work also has taken you to some interesting locations in the UK. You've climbed church spires. You've raided underground metro stations. It sounds like you're a bit of a daredevil. Can you tell us what? Like, I mean, I'm obviously joking, but I mean, you have gone to those locations. What were you doing there, and what did you find in those locations? Why were you going there?
So yeah, as part of my work with Bat Conservation Trust, I got to go to some really cool places which I wouldn't have been able to otherwise. So we were carrying out surveys to discover more about bats and how they use the landscape, where they live, and what types of species are roosting in different places. So historic churches, they're attractive to bats because, they've got lots of little entry points and little nooks and crannies, so bats can roost in them. And they're also surrounded by insect-rich courtyards, which, provide great habitat for these bats. So we got to climb up these spires and go up into where you've got the big church bells. And yeah, we would just sort of look at all the beams and any holes and try and find out what bats were roosting in them, because some bats roost repeatedly, so they would come back. So we would just make a note and document this. We went and sat out on some rooftops to do emergent surveys in the summer. So this is when bats are coming out. And so you would just sit on a roof and get a good view of a roost. Let's say it was on somebody's house, and just sit there with clickers. There would be 3 or 4 of us to make sure we got an average, and you just count how many came out. And then
Sounds
in the winter,
like good fun.
Yeah, it was great. You just like the little thermos of hot chocolate if it was cold, and sit up and count bats.
Nice. Some of the popular species of bat that you've studied include horseshoe bats, pipistrelles, long-eared bats. So I feel you are the ideal expert to help transform us into bat brainiacs. I mean, it looks like, have you got a bat jumper on at the moment?
I do. I mean,
let's see that. There we go.
It was a present from a friend.
Well, someone has just said great themed jumper, so I hope that you got some fans.
It is a favorite.
So yeah, I think the jumper says it all. You are the perfect person to help transform us into bat brainiacs. So why don't we start with some of the top facts about the bat family? What type of animals are they? What lineage do they come from? Where do they live? And what's their social structure like? What kind of families do they live in?
Okay, so I guess I'll start. So bats are mammals, and they belong to the order Chiroptera, which is Greek for hand-wing, which makes sense as they're flying mammals. They can be found in almost all parts of the world, and they live in different places except the extreme cold. So you don't find them in like the poles. But they settle anywhere from trees, rock crevices, old buildings, bridges, mines, and of course caves. There's approximately 1,300 species in the world, with 18 species in the UK. And they're generally split into 2 major groups. You've got the megabats and the microbats. Megabats include the fruit bats, which fly in the tropics and the subtropics, and the microbats are found worldwide, and they're much smaller and have different characteristics. Bats they tend to feed on insects, or the fruit bats on fruits. They have some really cool adaptations. There's this really cool bat that has a really long tongue so that it can feed on this specific flower when it opens, and the tongue is nearly twice the length of the bat, and it just hides it. I mean, it
twice the length of the bat.
Yeah, I think 1.5 times the length of the bat, and it lives in its chest. So then, when it wants to eat this nectar from the tube lip plant, it comes out and eats it. So yeah, it's really cool. And then you have vampire bats that like to eat blood, so they feed on rodents, birds, and small reptiles. Bats are somewhat solitary, but they're mostly social mammals, and they form huge colonies. You can get some living in colonies up to 50 million individuals. Wow. And they also form social bonds with each other. So they do this really cool thing, which is also a little bit gross maybe, but they produce calls to attract their mates, but they also communicate by scent. So some bats have like a gular gland on their necks, which they use to mark their territory. But when they want to attract a female, they mix the scent with a bit of urine to make their own perfume, I guess. And then they shower it to these females to attract them. So I guess the same way we kind of try and use perfume to smell attractive. So yeah, male bats do this and shower females with their scent to try and attract them.
Wow, that's a very unique way of attracting a mate. Could you tell us what's the name of the species of bat that has that really long tongue?
I think it's a tube-lip bat, the fruit bat that's found in Ecuador, the tube-lip nectar bat.
I'm definitely going to check that out. The tube-lipped
Yeah,
bat.
there's a really cool video on the National Geographic channel where they've managed to like get it in slow motion, and you can see it flying and hovering by this plant, and then the tongue coming out. It's exceptional footage.
Oh, it sounds incredible. I'm
Yeah.
going to see if I can find that for you guys, and I will put it in the description of this video if I manage to find it once we are done with the live stream. Sounds lots of different adaptations and locations that they live in. For me, the two standout features that make bats special is, of course, one of the most obvious, which is the fact that they can fly, but one thing which might not be as obvious to everybody out there is that they are the only mammal to be able to truly fly. You've got flying squirrels that can glide, but bats are the only mammals that can fly. How are they able to do this?
So we think, scientists think that the bats sort of evolved flight about 65 million years ago alongside birds and insects. And they evolved from non-flying mammals, as you said, that lived in trees, so like the lemurs and flying squirrels. And then bats evolved to have wings, and obviously it's more complicated than that. But so whereas birds and insects' wings are made out of dead material, so like their keratin feathers, bats, they actually have, their wings are made from their skin that is stretched out along their arms.
It's a living wing, isn't it?
Yeah. So they've got these elongated arms and fingers that are connected to the skin membrane which form the wings, and their thumbs don't connect to the wings, so they have them for walking on the ground or for handling food. But their skin is extremely thin and their bones are incredibly light, which is a result of having low calcium and minerals. But this really helps the bat keep its weight of the wings light. And they operate on the same skeleton as we have. So every joint that you see in the human hand is there in the bat's wing. I think they even have a couple of extra ones.
So basically, if we were to hold our hands out, whichever way you, there we go, both, like that.
Yeah, so like that, and like I guess their elbow, maybe their elbow is here, but then this like stretches out, and they've got these really long fingers that have the wing membranes. So if you think of how much control we have using our fingers and hands, bats are able to extend theirs just to make adjustments in the flights. They can position their wings into different shapes and change the degree and direction of lift very quickly. So it makes them dive like no other animal, giving them a huge advantage in flying and hunting prey.
I looked into this. I have a podcast called 30 Animals That Made Us Smarter. It's all about biomimicry and what we've learned from the natural world and applied it to human systems. I'm going to put a link down below to that particular episode, but exactly what you're saying, Gurveena, the whole of the wing is essentially elongated digits, and because they have this ability, just like our hands, to such great dexterity, it means they're able to fly in a way that's far more dynamic when you compare it to a bird which has a fixed wing. So really impressive animals. We've got a couple of questions coming in, which is fantastic. We've got one from Mateo, and we've also got one from Richard. Thanks for tuning in, guys. Richard wants to know, how important are bats in the food web? We might hold on to that for a second, because actually I want to talk about one of their other features, one of the things that I think makes them stand out, and actually Mateo is asking about right now. Bats can produce super high frequency sounds from 20,000 hertz. Of up to 200,000 hertz. Getting all my notes mixed up. Now, to put that into perspective, the human hearing range extends from 20 hertz all the way up to 20,000 hertz, if I've done my calculations correct. Bats can produce calls of up to 10 times our upper hearing limit, so 200,000 hertz. How do they make these high frequency calls? And if we can't hear them, how do we know that they're making them? Put you on the spot now for that one.
So they make sound the same way we do, by moving air past their vocal cords. So they make these high frequency sounds by contracting their larynx, which is the voice box. And some bats do this by clicking their mouths and leaving them open as they fly. Others use their nose. So I think the nose acts as a bit of a megaphone. And as you mentioned, they have these ranges of between 20 to 200 like kilohertz, and humans can only hear about 20 kilohertz. So they make these sounds that we cannot hear, and they use them to echolocate, to navigate their way around. So the bat emits a sound, and it waits to hear the echo of its sound, and it returns to the bat. And it then processes the information to figure out how far away the object is. Now, this is one of my favorite bat facts, is you might wonder that how can a bat produce such a loud, high-frequency sound without damaging its own ears or deafening them?
Yeah.
So for bats to listen out to their echoes, they have this muscle in their ear which contracts to reduce the hearing sensitivity. So it essentially protects the bat ear from the loud sounds. And it all happens incredibly quickly and fast at incredible speeds of milliseconds. So as the larynx is about to contract, so I think it's something like 6 milliseconds before the larynx contracts, the ear muscle sort of protects the bat's ear, and then it releases a sound, and then it comes back, and so then it's able to hear the echo to identify the object in front of it.
I want to show you on my face. I'm like this. Because I didn't know that. That's a very cool adaptation. I suppose it makes sense to be able to modifying one of their senses to, in conjunction with using one of the their ability to create these high frequency calls. So to everybody that's listening, so as Gurveena is explaining, these bats are making these high frequency sounds, sending it out into the world, and just like when you're in a cave, which we'll get to in a moment, some of those sounds will reflect back to that bat, which it then can pick up the sound and get almost like an acoustic representation or visual, what's it called, acoustic visualization. Does that make sense? Is that the right term?
Yeah, acoustic visualization. Yeah, it's sort of similar to sonar and echolocation that other animals also use.
So it's seeing the world with sound. And so if you're in a large room and you can hear that echo, you're in a big room, but if something is close to you, you can hear that the sound is coming from a much closer, so you know that there must be an object in front of you. I know that humans, again, in this podcast, we looked at a couple of humans that have been able to learn how to echolocate, which is really, really cool.
That's really cool.
I want to move on because we're already at about 17 minutes, but I think we'll continue a bit longer. We've got some great stories to cover with you. Thank you for your time, Gurveena. So we're talking about acoustic visualization, being able to see the world with sound, but bats also use their ability to echolocate to catch their prey. So can you tell us a little bit about that? Does it work on the same principle as their navigation?
Yeah, so they use the echolocation to navigate, but also to hunt. And actually, bats actually have really good eyesight. So contrary to the phrase "bats are as bad as blind as a bat," They hunt at dusk and dawn to look for insects. Now, obviously, insects are really small. They also make sounds that we can't hear, and so bats echolocate to try and identify their prey. So if you think they're flying at really high speeds to come out to catch their prey, they're also trying to avoid hitting into things or each other, then the echolocation really helps them narrow down and find their prey. It helps them tell the size of an insect and what direction the insect is coming from. So, it can tell based on the intensity of the echo. If the smaller object, a smaller the object is, the less intense the echo will be. A larger the insect, the more intense the echo will be. And depending on what ear the echo hits back, it can tell what direction the insect is in. So incredible. They use it to hunt and catch insects.
It almost, the way I picture it is almost like, it's like feeling the world with sound as well. I don't know if that makes sense, but that's the only kind of way I can put it into perspective. Bats have clearly mastered the art of using echolocation to see their world and to catch their prey. Here's a question for you. Why are high frequency sounds so good for echolocation? Why don't they use low frequency sounds?
So they use high frequency sounds because insects make high frequency sounds too. And so I guess it's sort of an evolutionary race to try and catch the insects that they eat. But also they use ultrasound waves, which reflect better than ordinary sound waves. And they also travel much further than those sound waves, and they can also travel through water.
Yeah, that's I think that's the cool thing about how animals use sound. You've got wolves and elephants that use low frequency sounds, like a wolf's howl is really low, and that can travel great distances because it's got this big sound wave, which means it can get around things. But with the bats, as you're explaining, they need to be able to let that sound bounce back really effectively, and that's what high frequencies can do. So really cool. We've got some more questions coming in before we head over from the UK over to Southeast Asia. What's your number one bat experience? We've got a story for you there. That's from Laurie Hedges, and another one from Richard. Do any other animals collect and use the bat poo found underneath cave dwellings? So I think he's talking about the guano. Do any animals collect the guano? I know one animal, one great ape, that does. That's you and I.
Yeah.
So maybe we can get to those in a bit, but let's turn our attention, Gurveena, to from church spires in the British countryside to dazzling pagodas and temples in Southeast Asia. You've been working in Myanmar on karst limestone and different species of bat. Tell us about that, because it's a really interesting experience that that you had out there.
Yeah, so I just left Myanmar. I was there for 4 years and was working with Fauna and Flora International on a variety of different projects. One of the projects was working on karst limestone landscapes, which are calcified rocky landscapes that have caves. And a lot of these caves have bats as well as other really cool invertebrates and reptiles. So we carried out some biodiversity surveys. The team even identified new species of gecko new to science. And based on those results, we were able to identify 8 cave areas that were a priority. So caves are threatened by the cement and mining industry, but also with heavy tourism. And the interesting thing in Myanmar, which I haven't seen in many other places, a lot of the caves have these shrines that these monks used, and they'd build these pagodas in the entrances of the caves, which was a good thing because it meant that a lot of companies can't mine those caves because they're sacred, but at the same time, there were, a lot of pilgrimages or lights and incense being used. And so we've been working with these different communities and these monks and the government to provide them with training on how to improve the management of caves and reduce the impact of all these different threats to it. So we developed good relationships with a number of the cave monasteries who are actively managing their caves by making sure they're not putting light into the dark areas where the bats live, and channeling tourists to less damaging parts of the cave, which are also home to bats, but also some really cool creepy crawlies that are superly uniquely adapted to these amazing ecosystems and to live in the dark. So it was a really cool experience.
I was just bringing up some images that you shared with me of those pagodas and some of those. They're really beautiful. Can you explain why those caves are at risk? You mentioned the cement companies. Can you explain to everybody why limestone and cement companies go hand in hand?
So limestone is calcified rock, and when you mine it, it's really easy to make cement from it. And obviously, as things are developing, and people build houses and roads, and cement is used in everything and everywhere. So, there's a huge demand for it.
Is a key ingredient in cement.
Yeah, it's a key ingredient. So they quarry the limestone, and I'm not sure on the exact process, but they mine and quarry these limestones and gather trucks and trucks of them, and then mix them up in cement factories and cement mixers.
Yeah, and so it seems that those monks are inadvertently saving those bats in some way. I think it's a really charming story. We've got a clip to finish off. A couple of questions for you still. Here's a funny one. There's a particular fruit out in Asia, probably one fruit that I do my best to avoid at all costs. I love fruit. I love my vegetables. I'm all for your 5 a day. But when it comes to this fruit, I am staying away. Hey, that rhymed.
Have you ever tried it?
Sorry?
Have you ever tried it?
No, I'm not going to
Okay.
try it. Can you tell everybody the fruit I'm talking about and why
Okay.
actually it's quite polarizing? But
Yeah.
the bats seem to be having a positive effect on the harvest of this crop.
So bats are major plant pollinators, especially in the rainforest. They feed on plants and gather pollen and help disperse these seeds. Um, they've recently shown to like the flowers of this fruit called durian. It's a soft, fleshy fruit, which also is maybe the smelliest fruit. It's really overpowering and it's really hard to get past that smell. But everyone in Asia loves it. And I got told you had to eat durian at least 10 times before you like it. And I had to make this video on bats and durian, and as a result, I ended up having to eat it many times, and it was a slow, painful process. But by like take 15, I think I had managed to get past the smell and actually taste the really nice, sweet, soft, like custardy taste that it has. And it was, yeah, it's really tasty. And I ended up eating some of the most tasty durian I've had in Sumatra and Indonesia. So yeah, bats
Interesting.
are
So it
yeah,
has a sweet kind of the good taste is a kind of sweet custardy taste, but then
yeah.
the bad smell is of like really bad smelling cheese, feet,
Yeah,
and
or
sick.
like people say it smells like rotten socks mixed with rotten cheese, and yeah, it's very, very pungent. It's banned on flights and in some hotels.
It is. That's how
Yeah,
smelly it is. You're not when you go
yeah.
to Asia. I've been to Southeast Asia a couple of times, and definitely in hotels and in planes they say no durian fruit. But it is really popular, like you said, and the bats are instrumental in fertilizing the flowers of the durian fruit. It's clear that the bats are giving back to the community in their own little way. Um, I wonder if there's anything in tourism. Do bats encourage more people to come and see the caves? Does that act as a way of kind of to protect them because they are encouraging people to come and see those wild spaces and check out the mountains of guano? I mean, have you worked in those conditions? What's it like?
So yeah, I mean people do like nature spectacles and bats, especially when they're coming out of their roosts in caves. It's just an incredible, incredible thing to see and watch. I know in Austin, Texas, they have these huge swarms that come out, and so they've now got this tourism board where people come and visit and stand on this bridge to view it. So yeah, they can bring in money like that, and also people like caves because they're also super interesting features. But caves aren't for everybody. Now, a lot of tourist caves, they have like little sandbags that you can walk on and they're set up. But I've been in some caves in Raja Ampat, Indonesia, which were just rogue. So they weren't set up in any way. And you had to like climb up these walls and then get into these caves. And they're massive, full of bats and guano. There's this really strong smell. It's quite overpowering. There's creepy crawlies everywhere on your legs. I was ankle deep in guano and woodlouse. And it's
In
quite
some
cool in the
cases,
caves.
you have to wear protective gear in some of those
Yeah,
caves.
the guano is super, super slippery. I've never walked on anything as slippery.
I mean, it
You're
is poo.
sliding
It is
all
bat poo.
over the place. And so it's really hard to, I mean, I did fall over multiple times, hands down in guano and woodlouse, looking for little crickets and blind cave bats, but it was really, really cool. So yeah, not everyone's cup of tea, but when you go visit some of the more set up caves, it's really, really, really nice. They've got, these platforms that you can walk on, and then you can take a look at all the species and bats that live in there.
So you, depending
Um,
on what experience you're looking for, you can have the kind of
yeah,
the leisurely, I don't know
the
what
glamping
you call the
cave.
glamorous version,
Yeah.
or the knee deep in poo version. Um, it sounds like you've had some really fantastic experiences. I think some of your colleagues maybe teasing you here. They're saying, "What about marine turtles, Miss Ghataure?" I have to apologise to Gavina. I know your research is currently focused on marine biology within Kenya, if I'm correct. But
Yes.
we got talking, and you told me about your experience working with bats, and I thought that'd be great to share with everybody at home. Let's end on this, because I'd love to show this clip of millions of bats that you captured on camera flying across the sky amidst the backdrop of the Shweda Gon Pagoda. I think I probably butchered the name of that pagoda.
You nailed it.
Could you tell us? It has a bit of a charming backstory to it. I think we've got about 2 minutes. Can you give us a little sum up?
So in and I was super excited. They were in this old abandoned building, and it was incredible. Okay, 2 more minutes, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I was. There was this huge swarm of bats that was coming out, and they almost looked like murmurations because they were huge at dusk. I luckily had an amazing view from my balcony, as you can see in the video, and I wanted to find out where they were coming from. And I knew the general direction that they were coming out from, and I'd spent it, but didn't quite work it out. So I set aside the following weekend to do that. But in the week, my ex that I was seeing at the time knew I wanted to do this so badly. So he ran around the streets trying to find where the bats were coming out from. And obviously there's a small window because you've got like 10 minutes. So he's sprinting between the streets asking people, and he found that they were in this abandoned building. And the next day took me there for a little picnic on Valentine's Day, which was really, really cute. So yeah, the key to my heart, wildlife spectacles. If they have bats, even better. But there were these millions of Asian wrinkled-lipped bats coming out. And the following year, so earlier this year, when they came back, I noticed that the roosts had multiplied. They were double in size, and they come and swarm in that building from October to maybe March, and then it gets hot, and then I think they move to another place. But it's incredible that you're in this city having these millions and millions of bats, and they're so important because they eat up to 6,000 to 8,000 insects a night per bat. So they control mosquito populations, they control agriculture pests, so they're great for farmers in their rice paddies.
6,000 insects per bat.
Yeah, depending on species, but yeah, they eat. Wow. Yeah, it can. Yeah, I think that kind of can stick. So yeah, some incredible. So, when you think of mosquitoes in cities, they're a great way to sort of control that, and also a great addition to your organic garden. So you don't need to use pesticides. Install a bat box, and then you've got your pests taken care of.
Wow, that's really cool. I do not like mosquitoes one bit, so bats are my friends. I think we're gonna have to call it a day there, Gurveena. At the 33-minute mark, but I think that was I just want to say a massive thank you. Some great questions in from our viewers as well. Thank you for joining in. Gurveena, it's been fantastic to talk to you. Could you just let us know what's up next for you once we're allowed to travel?
So I was in the middle of relocating, so I'm currently in the UK, but as soon as I can travel, I will be moving to Lamu in Kenya to work on a marine conservation project with Fauna and Flora International.
Fantastic.
So yeah, until then, I'll be hanging tight, looking for bats.
Yeah, for sure. Well, look, it's been fantastic to talk to you. Thank you for spending some time with us, and good luck for your trip to Kenya once we're allowed to move around. So yeah, thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Patrick.
Awesome. All right, take care, Gurveena. That was Gurveena Ghataure from Fauna and Flora International. That was a great chat, and I hope you all enjoyed it. Next week, we've got a whole bunch of talks coming up, so take a look at the video list. Make sure you subscribe if you are a new viewer, and if you are an existing viewer, click the bell. It will send you a notification once we are ready to go live. Please leave a comment. Let me know what you think of these Wild and Live shows and episodes. If there are any particular subjects you'd like to see come up, let me know. Until then, next week, Monday, 11 a.m. Have a great weekend, and I'll see you all next time. Peace. Should we have some sound effects? Let's go for it. Let's do the DJ horn. Take care, everybody. Have a great weekend. See ya.